Hey, I'm Dr. Joan, and welcome to Hey, I'm Listening. Today, my guest is Dr. Andrew Blackwood, a good friend of mine, also known as Coach Drew. Now, Coach Drew, he is the healing communication coach. He is the wonderful husband of a beautiful wife and the father of two beautiful children. He is a former marriage and family therapist, and I'm just honored to have him here with me today. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Joan. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. So, talk to us about the healing communications. What is that all about, Andrew?
Oh, yes. What is that all about? Well, I believe that healthy communication is healing communication.
Hmm.
There's no one who's perfect.
Yeah.
So if you're in a relationship with another human being,
Yes.
there's going to be hurt.
Yes.
So it's really, really important to be able to address our emotional injury, emotional pain with
Hmm.
both care
Hmm.
and competence. It's
Ah.
not enough to care because a lot of damage is done by caring people. Um, that my emphasis is not only just on what you say to people,
Mhm.
but also how you are with yourself, because we're talking to ourselves
All
all
the
the
time.
time,
All the
but
time.
we're not aware. So
Yes.
how you deal with yourself on a
Yes.
deep level
Yes.
ultimately it's how you deal with the people closest to you. When push
Yes.
comes to shove, if you're unkind to yourself when you mess up, how do you think you're going to be when the people who are closest to you mess up?
Right.
That's exactly what you're going to do. So, increasing awareness of how we are, how we speak to ourselves, and how we relate to others, and incorporating healthy principles about
Yes.
communication makes it healing communication. That's what I love to help people with.
Awesome. So, how did you become so passionate about healing communications? Like, what brought you here?
I think long before I became a therapist and before I transitioned into this specific way of coaching, um, not only was I human, but like I said before, I experienced hurt.
Yeah.
And, I grew up an anxious kid
Mm.
and I had no idea how to navigate the world. I didn't. I grew up in church and there was a lot of hurt in that environment.
Yeah.
And most of it wasn't even intentional, but just the application of scripture alone, it sent my anxiety through the roof.
Yeah.
So I was never good enough. I had doubts about my salvation from day one
Mm.
because if you come to know the Lord, then you are a new creation, and the things that you used to do, you don't do no more. And I was still doing those things. So I'm like, that must mean I'm not saved. I'm like going to hell. And I was just like hellbound for most of my life.
Right.
But it wasn't until I started to pay attention or learn and really unlearn and really appreciate God's love for me
Mm.
and how God communicated with me.
Mm.
Like, God has never been mean to me. He's never been unkind to me, right? So I've
Yes.
learned to, like, stop internalizing those other voices and to hear God communicate to me and learn to love myself and communicate with myself the way that he speaks to me. So
And
that's the
that's such
long and short
a,
of it.
yeah, but that's such a journey though, right, Andrew? It's such a journey to not only hear God communicate, but come to that place of understanding that God is love, and that it is us who don't love. But we like to see God in such a human way that we can't understand or perceive that the spirit, this God that is so much bigger than anything we could perceive or conceive, that all of it is love. It's a hard thing. So many of us don't even recognize in churches that, it's not belief that saves us, but the continual progression of transformation into this new being that we are to be, right? And so, how did you eventually kind of make sense of it all? And how did you begin the journey of just speaking to yourself well? And what are some of the things that you say to yourself now, by the way?
Well, it's to your point, it's been progressive.
Yeah.
So my earliest days, I just had an awareness that God was there and that he was communicating with me and he loved me,
Yeah.
but I doubted that love over the years as a result of messages from other people.
Mm.
But I had self-esteem issues. I hated me, Joan. I didn't
Mm.
like my skin. I didn't like my hair. I been confused about lots of stuff in my life.
Mhm.
And it was when God pointed that out to me. I was in a church service and they were doing one of these things. And I said, okay, you know what? We want you to put something on a piece of paper, write on paper and pin it to the cross.
Yeah.
And, we're going to, pin it leave it at the cross. And what I wrote on my head, it was as if God took my hand and wrote for me, I
Yeah.
hate myself.
Oh,
It was that moment where I realized, oh my goodness,
wow.
I hate myself. And I
Wow.
was able to say, okay, you know what? God doesn't hate me. I
Mm.
hate me. And
Mhm.
he helped me to learn how to love me.
Right.
There were things in my life that I wanted to change, that I wanted to stop doing, that I wanted to feel differently about. And none of that could happen. And it didn't happen. And I don't think he wanted it to happen until I knew that he loved me as I was, where I was. And
Right.
that's where my journey of starting to love and accept myself started, when I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you love and accept me already,
Yeah.
right? And over the years, it's evolved. I journal, and that's one of my favorite ways of praying and communing. And that's where I really realized, okay, what am I saying to myself? When
Mm.
I think this, I feel this. And I process that and I pray with him and I commune with him and I hear him talk back to me. So that's what it's evolved to now. And it's gonna continue evolving, but that's the bulk of my communion now and my understanding of how I commune with myself.
Right. So that moment of like tagging that piece of paper and really the belief, and the substance of something so dark, such as self hatred, but really pinning it to the cross and then symbolically just like what did you imagine happened to it as it went on that cross, as even as you look back
Joan,
now?
Joan, I couldn't even make it to the cross. I was so broken in that moment that I couldn't leave my seat. I was awash with tears at the realization.
Wow.
Like it took me days to be like, oh my goodness, this is how, and I was 19 when that happened. This is
Wow.
how I felt about myself for all this time. Thankfully, he already went to the cross, so I didn't have to get there.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, it was such a pivotal moment for me.
Wow.
That degree of awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
And so from there, how did you talk to that young man? And how did you talk to the layers of younger and even younger self and going right back to like those, even pre 5, maybe even pre 3 moments? How did you go back? What did you do? What did you say to that version or versions of yourself?
It's been at different points in time because I don't know about you or anybody else, but I got a whole lot of issues.